Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about the stories of the players on Survivor 50 heading into the season. Don't have time to watch 49 seasons of Survivor before Survivor 50? Did you miss Kyle and Kamilla's season, or you have no idea why people say Chrissy was robbed? I got you. Think of this video as a sort of lightning round refresher on each player playing on Survivor 50 and their story heading into the season, their highlights, and what's at stake for them this season. Other than the $1 million, we'll be going in order of season played, starting at Jenna on season 1 and ending with Rizo and Savannah on season 49. And there are timestamps in the video description if you want to jump to a particular player. There are 24 freaking players on this season, so let's go. Our first player is Jenna Lewis-Dougherty, who originally played on Season 1, Survivor Borneo, and later in Survivor All-Stars. In Borneo, Jenna was basically the cool, independent, single mom, which still had a bit of a taboo around it at the time, and she was perhaps most famous for not receiving a video from home during the Loved Ones Challenge, which brought her a lot of public sympathy. Jenna returned in All-Stars as representation for the Pagong tribe, where she showed far more strategic acumen than her first time around, and she was the chief architect of one of the season's defining storylines, the decision to pick off all the winners early.
You gotta be silly not to bring a winner to the final two.
I just don't want you and Tina around because you're winners.
You honestly think that?
Yeah.
This, and her subsequent deep run in the game, made her pretty unpopular with fans for a long time. But over the years, opinions have softened on her, and many now view her as strategically ahead of her time. For Jenna, 50 is a chance to come full circle. It's hard to think of a better story than a player from Season 1 who came back and helped define returnee season strategy, winning Survivor 50. If anyone from Borneo could do it, it's her. Our next player is Colby Donaldson, who originally played on Survivor Australia and later in Survivor All-Stars and Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. Colby was America's hero in Australia, the charming cowboy who gave up a guaranteed $1 million when he decided to take Tina to the final two instead of Keith, on his belief that Tina was more deserving.
The winner of Survivor, the Australian Outback.
Colby was also an absolute challenge beast in Australia. He won nearly every post-merge challenge, but his two subsequent appearances was a series of diminishing returns. In Heroes vs. Villains, he majorly underperformed physically. His own tribe mates who grew up idolizing him told him to his face he was a disappointment. Ouch. Colby limped along to the final 5 as the last hero standing. Colby's first 3 seasons were also defined by his flirting turned rivalry with Jerry, who is oddly not on this cast, which confirms for me even more why Colby's here. Colby's story for 50 is whether or not he can get his mojo back. Despite his early popularity, I really don't think we would be seeing him on this season if he didn't have a serious fire in his belly to win. Colby knows he's 1 for 3 on Survivor, and that his legacy is as a guy who was good the first time, but failed to live up to the hype later. Colby doesn't have to win to find his redemption, but he has to show up in a big way, and I think he will. Next is Stephenie LaGrossa Kendrick, who originally played on Survivor Palau and later on Survivor Guatemala and Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. In her day, Stephenie was unequivocally one of the most popular players of all time. In one of Survivor's most unique stories, her entire Oolong tribe was demolished pre-merge, leaving her as the lone survivor of her tribe. This has never happened before or since. She returned in Guatemala, a season she absolutely dominated strategically, but without the underdog narrative, her duplicity and overly type A personality lost her the game at Final Tribal. Factoring in outside of Survivor stuff, Stephenie was also betrayed by Cirie on the Traitors, so I do wonder what, if any, role that will play on 50. Stephenie is here purely on her run in Palau, which is incredibly iconic, and she's here representing that early era of Survivor heroes. It will be interesting to see how Stephenie has changed with age. She seemed merely along for the ride on the Traitors, but I actually think the more fiery Stephenie we saw in Guatemala could win in the new era. Next up is Cirie Fields, who originally played on Survivor Exile Island and later on Survivor Micronesia, Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, and Survivor Game Changers. Cirie is an absolute icon of the show, the original couch potato who got up off the couch to play Survivor and became one of its greatest social players and strategic minds. Cirie is the universal consensus best to never win player. This is a woman who is terrible at challenges, has a massive and known threat level, and yet is 3 for 4 on deep runs and has never been eliminated in a simple majority vote. Seriously. Fire, Surprise Final 2, Idol, only one to not have an advantage. Cirie simply getting voted out would be history making. Because of her numerous past successes, she's one of the few players here whose legacy is 100% secure going into this season, and an early ouster on 50 wouldn't really have any effect on her legend status. Cirie has proven she can win other reality shows, but those almost wins on Survivor undoubtedly linger in the back of her mind. So in that sense, Cirie's story is one of unfinished business with the game itself. She's come so close so many times. It's time she finally gets that Survivor win she deserves. Next up is Ozzy Lusth, who played in Survivor Cook Islands, then later in Survivor Micronesia, Survivor South Pacific, and Survivor Game Changers. Ozzy in Cook Islands is in the running for single greatest physical performance in a season in Survivor history. The man was an absolute dolphin in the water, and it made him very popular with fans. But Ozzy's never really shown much strategic acumen, and he often falls prey to his, let's say, his more base impulses. Ozzy's story felt pretty complete after his third appearance, where, credit where credit's due, he bravely sent himself to Redemption Island to protect his alliance, earned his way back into the game twice, and came up just short at Final 4. It happened. Ozzy finally showed he had a head for the game. His strategy was win challenge, but still. Jeff famously fought against putting Ozzy on Game Changers behind the scenes, and his instincts were right. Ozzy failed to adapt and turned in one of the most nothing returny performances of all time. My question is, can Ozzy actually navigate the new era? Has he learned that being the camp provider means almost nothing these days? I'd love to see Ozzy actually give the strategic side of Survivor a serious crack, but he's probably just gonna try to flirt with Dee or something. Next, let's look at Coach Wade, who originally played in Survivor Tocantins and returned in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains and Survivor South Pacific. The hype meter goes to 11 for this one. Coach's tribemate Brendan described him as either the modern-day Jacques Cousteau or the biggest fraud of all time, and we're still trying to figure out which one it is all these years later. I'd recommend just watching Coach's trip to Exile Island if you want to get Coach in a nutshell, but the man is probably the greatest reality TV character of all time. The guy comes into Survivor looking like a dime store romance cover model, tells stories about nearly getting eaten by natives in the Amazon jungle, did his coach Chi on the beach, and calls himself the Dragon Slayer after voting out a guy who sells granola. Coach is peak TV. For all the reasons I just said, Coach was received as a bit of a joke his first 2 times, but his third appearance he played a really impressive Godfather game which would make Boston Rob blush. He literally started his own cult, but failed to own his game at Final Tribal and paid the price for it with a loss. Coming into 50, I was fearful Coach might have lost his edge now that he's a silver fox, but the guy is so braggadocious and talking so much shit on his social media that I know he's still got it. Survivor 50 is one last adventure for the man who conquered the Amazon, the Congo, the Orinoco, the Darien Gap, and living with Russell and Brandon Hance. Count me in.
The ancient samurai used to say that if you wanted to win the war, you had to cut off the head of the dragon. You, my friend, are the dragon.
Let's move on to Aubry Bracco, who originally played in Survivor Korong and returned 2 additional times in the 30s, Survivor Game Changers and Survivor Edge of Extinction. Aubry was the breakout star in her first season for her metaphor-laden confessionals and for driving a ton of the season's strategy. Aubry had a near-guaranteed path to a Final 3 win, but at the Final 5 her closest ally was medically evacuated, and Aubry placed second to Michelle in a Final Tribal result which was controversial for years. After the high of her first game, Aubry's returns were similar to Colby, a series of diminishing returns. In Game Changers, she went far but was not a major driver of votes, and in Edge of Extinction, she was blindsided pre-merge with an idol in her pocket by players she thought were her allies. I think for the audience and for her, it was simply a case of too much Aubry on Survivor too fast. And in post-game interviews, Aubry was understandably frustrated at how her Survivor career ended. I know she was a late addition to the cast, but for that reason, I'm still rather surprised to see her out here on 50. So, Aubry is here seeking redemption for her past failures and trying to regain the former glory of her first appearance on the show. It'll be interesting to see Aubry 10 years older than her original appearance. She could find her peace with the Survivor experience, or leave even more jaded than before. Now we are in the realm of players from the 30s who have not yet had a chance to return. So let's begin with Chrissy Hofbeck from Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. Survivor 50 seemingly intentionally cast a lot of players who lost in controversial final tribal results, and few are more controversial than Chrissy's. Chrissy played a dominant physical game in Triple H and tied the record for immunity wins by women. She was the architect of a lot of blindsides, but her social game was admittedly weak, especially with other women. Nevertheless, she won the last immunity challenge at Final Four, and her, Ryan, and Devin were set to send prevailing jury threat Ben home, only for Survivor to introduce Final Four firemaking, which Ben went on to win, putting him in the Final Three where he defeated Chrissy. Additionally, since she originally played, she had a double mastectomy because of a genetic mutation making her extremely likely to develop breast cancer. On a show where the quote-unquote older woman is so often written off, Chrissy's back to show what she showed the world the first time, just how strong she is. Let's move on to the first of our 3 Survivor David vs. Goliath returnees, Christian Hubicki. Christian was a shoo-in and probably on 99.9% of Survivor 50 Dreamcasts. And what's not to love? Christian is probably the most entertaining and funny player in the nerd archetype we've ever had. Early on, he was fitting into almost everyone's plans, even after he got swapped, on entertainment factor alone. But Christian is simply too likable for his own good. He was a perennial target at the merge, but he and his allies leveraged an impressive amount of advantages to regain their foothold. Down the stretch, Christian was unable to control his threat level, and his target grew so big his own allies ultimately turned on him and voted him out. The question I have about Christian is, can he shake that target? Christian's a popular and frequent guest on Survivor podcasts. He is very embedded in the Rob Has a Podcast community, and that isn't exactly turning down the heat on him. With Christian on Survivor 50, you're definitely going to be getting more of the same charming, funny Christian. For how long is up to him and apparently Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon may decide my fate in this game.
Let's move on to Angelina Keeley, the third placer of Survivor David vs. Goliath. Angelina is another player who would have returned by now had she had the opportunity, and it's no surprise she's on 50. Angelina is one of my favorite players of all time. She was so entertainingly delusional. I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. I don't think I've ever laughed more at Survivor than watching Angelina, whether she was negotiating for rice, risking her life for an idol on a 50-foot ladder, or scheming to get jackets. Angelina was absurdly entertaining pretty much every second she was on the show.
Natalie, is there any way I could have your jacket? Natalie?
She had this habit of doing something that was like a 3 out of 10 on the cool scale tops, and then retelling it with such grandeur it bordered on tall tale. And the jury awarded her 0 votes for keeping them so entertained. What the heck? I do think my biggest question is how sincere Angelina's return is gonna be. Sometimes these big characters return to Survivor and are doing a shtick. They're doing an impression of themselves from the first time. See Debbie in Game Changers for the quintessential example of that. But even if she's just doing the greatest hits of years past, I don't think Angelina's legacy is in trouble here. If she's out early, she'll still be remembered as one of the most entertaining players ever. But if we get Angelina for a while, if she's evolved into strategic Angelina, she'll become even more iconic, if that's even possible. Let's look at our final David versus Goliath player, Mike White. In his season, Mike played a dominant strategic and social game. He was at the center of the Goliath alliance, but he was never the target for the minority due to his good threat management and him having side deals with a lot of the David tribe. He had this uncanny ability to organize votes and head off fractures within his own alliance without emerging as a target himself. He was a dominant strategic force start to finish, but Nick's underdog story resonated better with the jurors, and Mike got second place. Going behind the scenes a bit, Mike reportedly didn't really give Final Tribal his all because he felt guilty as a rich guy from Hollywood trying to take $1 million from a public defender from rural Kentucky. And while Mike's game was certainly appreciated at the time, I think just how much power, leverage, and insulation he had has only really been understood in recent years. So Mike's game has aged like a fine wine. So why is he here on 50? The White Lotus, of course. While he was famous in his first season, he is more popular than ever before given his show's success. Mike is here purely to up the star power and crossover appeal of 50, and I'm just fine with that. Let's look at our final old school player, Rick Devens, who played on Survivor Edge of Extinction. Rick had a rough start to the game. His tribe lost the first 4 immunity challenges, and Rick was actually voted out in episode 4, but he was secretly sent to the titular Edge, an Exile Island-style beach where eliminated players went and could earn their way back into the game, which Rick did at the merge. Post-merge, Rick was rarely in the know on what was going on, and that didn't matter at all. He won immunities and played idols like it was his job, and he did so in the biggest, grandest, boldest way possible, pandering to a jury who were eating it all out of the palm of his hand. But Rick came up just short when another Edge returnee came back at Final 6, won final immunity, and put himself in fire against Rick, sending Rick to the jury. Rick's unique in the sense that of all the players here who've only played once, he's sort of played twice, given his return at the merge from the Edge of Extinction. And on his return, he intentionally played harder and bolder with his second life in the game, and it paid off for him. So going into 50, I do wonder which side of Rick we'll see. His early conservative gameplay got him voted out. His borderline reckless gameplay later on got him a target he couldn't shake. So I'm very interested to see what approach Rick takes as a one-time player to is basically a two-time player. Moving on to the new era players, all these players are returning for the first time. Returnee seasons are often where legacies are defined, so for many of these players, this is a chance to cement themselves in the Survivor history books, for good or bad. Our first new era player is Jonathan Young from Survivor 42. Jonathan is best known for being one of the biggest and best challenge beasts in Survivor history. He quite literally carried his tribe on his back in challenges, and his performance in the Episode 3 immunity this season is one of the most impressive physical feats in the show's history. Jonathan, however, struggled strategically and socially, especially down the stretch when he was constantly hangry, and hey, look at him, I kinda don't blame him on that one. He got to the Final Four, but had basically zero win equity. We're undoubtedly going to get some incredible physical performances from Jonathan before season's end, but for Jonathan, Survivor 50 is a chance to show that he's not all muscles. Jonathan's had more time than any other new era player to assess where his game went wrong, so if he's focused on fine-tuning his social game, he could prove that he's got brain and brawn. Next is Emily Flippen from Survivor 45. Emily had a very interesting arc in that she was disliked early and was a guaranteed first boot in episode 1 before she was saved by another player quitting. With that reality check, she put in the work to recover her game and slowly emerged as a really strong social and strategic player, but flew too close to the sun when she blindsided Bruce and emerged as one of the biggest threats in the game. More than most, I'm curious where Emily's story goes from here. She came out of 45 content with her performance and hesitant about the idea of returning to Survivor, and I agree in the sense that it feels like her story was wrapped up very neatly. I think the most interesting question will be which Emily is showing up for Survivor 50? Day 1 Emily, who was overconfident and brash, or the more humbled Emily of later in the season? 50 is a chance for Emily to truly ink her name in the history books as one of Survivor's greatest comeback stories. but an early or embarrassing ouster could also make her prior game look like a fluke. Next is Dee Valladeres, winner of Survivor 45. Dee got control of her tribe on day one and basically didn't lose it until she handed her fate in the game over to the jury. Dee formed a majority alliance on her tribe. She had a close partnership with Julie and had Austin eaten out of the palm of her hand, and at the merge her alliance, the Reba 4, intentionally obscured their bond, allowing them to slip through to the end together. While Dee basically worked with one group the entire game, she established strong social bonds with her enemies, but had this incredible power to send them out of the game feeling respectful rather than bitter, a result which paid $1 million dividend. Dee's already the near universal consensus best new era player, but a strong showing on 50, and especially a win on 50, would instantly put her into the best of all time conversation. But returning as a first-time winner is also a double-edged sword. Look at someone like JT, who damaged his reputation with his subsequent appearances, or Kim, who seemed to have lost her mojo on Winners at War. No one can take Dee's amazing first game away from her, but in 50, Dee has the chance to vault herself into legend status, or do a little damage to her overall legacy. The next player is Tiffany Nicole Ervin from Survivor 46. Tiffany started Survivor 46 on the train wreck of a tribe known as Yanu, but her excellent social game kept her safe. However, at the merge, her relationship with Q completely evaporated, and they were in each other's crosshairs for the rest of her time in the game before she became the third of many players on this season to be blindsided with an idol in their pocket. Tiffany is probably the biggest question mark on this cast. I don't think she was on many people's radar as a returnee for a season as big as this one. So either production really feels like she has major untapped potential, or they're pulling a Francesca and she's just here to fight with Q some more. In terms of legacy, Tiffany doesn't really have one, at least not to the degree these other players do. So for her, the potential to pull a Wentworth in Second Chance and become a Survivor superstar on a surprise return is very much there. But there's also the Monica in Second Chance downside, where an early elimination would have everyone scratching their heads at her placement on this season, even more so. Let's move on to Tiffany's best frenemy, Q Burdette, also from Survivor 46. Q is best known for his hilarious one-liners and ridiculously chaotic gameplay. This is a guy who blew up his game multiple times, once by trying and failing to get himself voted out, and yet somehow made the final 6 as a complete tribal pariah and a major target at 5 votes in a row. And thank God, because every moment with Q was absolute gold. He made his tribe play hide and seek, he invented new fashions, he canceled Christmas. There was never a dull moment with Q.
And if Mo thinks she's gonna set me up, Mo can cancel Christmas.
As for Q's strategy, oh, who cares, man? Q is the only player here who I truly do not think could ever win a game of Survivor. He's a strong physical player, but too chaotic and confrontational and impulsive to ever win. A deep run would secure future returns, but Q's so entertaining that even if he's the first boot this season, he'll still probably be back. So Q is on 50 simply to deliver more of the same of his unique and hilarious brand of chaos. Our last player from Survivor 46 is Charlie Davis. Charlie was a strong strategic player on his season, a single bitter jury vote away from winning the game, and also a Swiftie. Seriously, this guy fucking loves Taylor Swift. He probably even likes Life of a Showgirl. Taylor aside, Charlie is probably best remembered for his strategic partnership with Maria, and more importantly, its fallout. This pair ran the Sika tribe and controlled a lot of votes post-merge, but they had a mutual strategic breakup at the end of the game and targeted one another as their own biggest threats, a battle Charlie won. However, despite their interpersonal and strategic closeness, Maria didn't vote for Charlie at Final Tribal. She voted for Kenzie because she saw the fire in her eyes, and that ultimately cost Charlie the game. That narrative that he lost to a single bitter jury vote of an ally who targeted him first is absolutely why Charlie is here on 50. Charlie has unfinished business with this game, but he can almost only go down. Let's move on to our sole Survivor 47 representation, Genevieve Mushaluk. After Genevieve activated like the Terminator in episode 4, she was a major force in her season. Seriously, she just turned on one day.
I am a bossy type A woman, and I don't want to just be going along with plans, especially if they're not in my best interest.
Though she was very good at social manipulation, Genevieve's biggest weakness was timing. She organized the elimination of her own ally, which instantly caused her to lose friends and put her in the minority. She proved to be a strong player even when playing from the bottom, and at Final 7, she, Sam, and Andy took advantage of a split vote plan to eliminate Caroline in a move called Operation Italy, widely considered one of the single best moves of the new era. So Genevieve is coming into 50 to realize her full potential. She is on the bubble of Survivor starhood. The closest analog I can think of is maybe Amanda in Micronesia. A strong showing against these legends would probably cement her as a perennial Survivor returnee if she wants it, but if she performs poorly, this is probably it for her. Next, let's look at our first Survivor 48 returnee, Kamilla Karthigesu. Kamilla's claim to fame is her secret alliance with Kyle. They fooled everyone into thinking they weren't working together when they were actually one of the tightest duos in the history of the game. And that unquestioned loyalty to one another got them through a rough swap, through the merge, and all the way to the Final 4, where Kamilla left the game in firemaking as the odds-on jury favorite. She earned a few immunity wins and clearly grew as a player and person in her time on Survivor. And now the question is, were these two dependent on each other, or can Kamilla succeed on 50 with Kyle on a different tribe? And will their past alliance be a liability down the stretch? Kamilla showed a lot of strategic acumen on a season where loyalty was rewarded more than strategy. Will she thrive in a more duplicitous season? We'll have to see. Next is Joe Hunter, also from Survivor 48. Joe's a great guy who played a frustrating game. Joe formed his bonds early and then basically never broke them, resulting in a stagnant post-merge where Joe had an iron grip on the tribe and was able to pick off outsiders one by one. He was particularly close with Eva, who he publicly helped through an autistic episode she had at a challenge, a moment so moving Jeff was openly weeping.
I'm a parent too, and I do see it, and wow, this has never happened.
Joe was pretty popular with the audience at home, but all the loyalty and honor stuff got him on the island was a shellacking from the jury and a paltry single jury vote. So in Survivor 50, I'd love to see Joe approach the game from a new angle. If Joe comes into 50 wanting to play a more cutthroat game, I'm here for it. But if Joe comes in with the same mindset that he had the first time, that Survivor is a game where the person with the most integrity should win, he'll top out at Final Tribal Loser again. For this reason, I'm looking forward to reading his preseason interviews more than anyone else. 50 is a chance for Joe to learn from his mistakes. But will he? Let's move on to the Survivor 48 winner, Kyle Fraser. As I said in my section on Kamilla, Kyle and Kamilla had a very close and secret bond. He was in the majority, she was in the minority, they protected one another. Kyle was really good at building sincere social bonds with pretty much everyone he talked to, and he was very good at resisting the urge to overplay his hand, which was sometimes frustrating as a viewer because the post-merge of 48 was so stagnant, but clearly this was the right call for Kyle's game. Kyle is also pretty widely considered one of the best players of the new era, often in the number 1 or 2 spot. So like Dee, a win would instantly put him in conversation for best of all time. But the question is, what is Kyle bringing us on a return, especially so soon and especially with Kamilla here? I'd actually love to see Kyle approach Survivor 50 like he's playing with house money and play a bolder, even reckless strategic game. Ironically, I think him saying screw it and playing huge, even if it results in disaster, might be a net gain on his legacy than running the 48 playbook back but not winning. Let's move on to our first Survivor 49 representative, Rizo Velovic. Rizo is coming to Survivor 50 with only a 2-week layover from Survivor 49, where he was a big jury favorite eliminated in Final 4 firemaking. Rizo and Savannah were blindsided at the merge, but after that put in the work to turn the rival alliance against itself. Savannah won immunities, and Rizo threatened to play his idol every round, pushing the target off their backs. With Sophie, they turned being in a 7-3 minority at the merge into being 3 of the final 4. Impressive stuff. I'm excited to see how Rizo approaches 50. He plays hard, smart, and to win, and he's one of the boldest players we've seen in recent years. This is a guy who would rather play hard and get voted out first, than play soft and make final 3 and get 0 votes. And the breakneck pace of Rizo's game will probably serve him well in a season where there will be 24 eliminations in 26 days. Rizo wants to be in the Survivor history books so bad, and he'll have quite a legacy if he pulls off another deep run playing as hard as he did the first time. Finally, let's talk about our last Survivor 50 player, Survivor 49 winner, Savannah Louie. As I mentioned, Savannah and Rizo turned a 7-3 deficit into endgame placements. Savannah was extremely skilled in the challenges and tied the immunity challenge record for women, which came in clutch more than once when her neck was on the line. But Savannah at times struggled with her interpersonal relationships with those outside her main bubble, and some members of her cast found that she had little interest in getting to know them.
I would like for you to please name one family member or partner of everybody on the jury.
I don't think I can do that.
Still, her strong strategic game and immunity wins earned her the respect of the jury. Savannah's coming into 50 with a 2-week layover from 49, without the other players having seen her season, and as a known winner. It's quite a target to shake off right out of the gate, so I actually don't think many will fault Savannah if she's in trouble or even out early. On the plus side, like Dee and Kyle, a second win would put her in conversation for best ever, and perhaps even trigger an early reevaluation of her game in 49. Which has been received as a bit of a middle-of-the-road victory. But the prevailing questions for now, heading into 50, is how a cast of players who know just how much havoc a back-to-back returnee, let alone a winner, can wreak, will respond to her. There we have it, the story so far for every single returning player on Survivor 50. Legacies are on the line this season, and now I want to know, which players and storylines are you most invested in? Who will cement themselves as one of the greats, and who will falter? Let me know what you think. Got nothing else for ya. We're just getting started on the Survivor 50 coverage, so like and subscribe, and I'll get you more Survivor 50 content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.